This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com. This show is brought to you by Slice on Broadway, supporting Pittsburgh podcasting with the perfect pepperoni pizza. Production services by Sidekick Media Services. And listeners like you, supporting us at patreon.com/AwesomeCast.
Hello. It's Tuesday night, but this is not the Sorg that you guys usually have. This is the upgraded Sorg for the version. Mr. Sorg, who usually runs the show, is off on special assignment in Florida at this point. But it is time to get geeky, get awesome, and it's the AwesomeCast here in Pittsburgh. Like I said, I am not Mike Sorg, I am Missy Sorg, and I am joined here as well with Dave Podner. That's a familiar face you guys are all familiar with.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And, honestly, if people are around the Sorgatron Media empire, people should know who Missy is. Even if they don't necessarily see you, Sorg does talk about you.
That is true. I am wife of the show. So if you've ever heard him talk about wife of the show or Missy or Misfit or whatever he happens to refer to me as, his life roommate, whatever. I don't know. But so that's who I am. And so tonight we're going to be talking a little bit different with stuff. It's going to be the same show. It's going to be some tech talk. It's going to be some news and different things like that. So I think we're going to go ahead and jump right into things if that's cool with you, Podner.
Sounds good.
All right.
Let's get awesome.
Let's get awesome. Let's get geeky. So we're going to go ahead and start off with our awesome things of the week. And Podner, do you know what day today is?
March 10th. I actually had to look that up.
You did have to look that up.
I had to look that up.
It might be March 10th to some people, but it's also Mario Day. So my awesome thing of the week is actually from Super Mario Brothers Wonder. So when I was looking at some of the tech news for this week, it was kind of interesting because I found an article about what does the goo in Super Mario Brothers Wonder taste like? So, Podner, have you played or seen anything with Super Mario Brothers Wonder?
I have. No, I have not. And I'm looking at the article and I'm seeing the giant gelatinous green goop.
Yeah, pretty much. So I'm going to try to pull this up right here. Bear with me just a moment. So we have, there it is on the screen. So you can see the green goop. So the question came in, what does it taste like? And Andrew Webster at The Verge tried to get the answer from the director, Shiro Mori, and producer, Takashi Tezuka, who actually put together the game. And it's became kind of an interesting thing. So like I said, in the picture, you could see that it looked kind of like it's a green jelly looking kind of substance in the game. So
it's almost if Mountain Dew was Jell-O.
Actually, I think that's kind of an accurate description of it. Yeah, absolutely. If Mountain Dew was Jell-O, that's really good. Yeah. So that was the thing is a lot of people on the internet then started kind of weighing in. What would it taste like? And the stuff that they talked about was kind of interesting. And honestly, the thing that kind of brought it out is if you've played the game, you'll see these little flowers that talk to you periodically throughout the game. And they say little encouraging things to you. They raise questions about, you might not want to go there because there's some bad stuff up ahead type of thing, or be careful type of stuff. So it's just, the flowers play a cute little integral character part. And one of the flowers asks Mario, how's the goo taste? And that single line sparked curiosity. So like I said, somebody actually wrote an article about it and they reached out to the director and the producer for the game to ask if they knew, which the funny thing is, they didn't really have any thought behind it when they put the game together. So it was kind of interesting because, like you indicated, so if there was a flavor, what do you think it would taste like? Like what flavor would the goo be?
When I look at it, I'm thinking lime Jell-O.
Okay.
Because if you get to straight lime Jell-O out of the box, it's that color. But I could see because it looks like there's some bubbles and some fizz in it. And I can almost see the little critters that are in there almost being like fruit and jello.
Okay, so it's a Jello
Like
salad.
a jello salad.
In your opinion, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So here's one of the interesting takes that they had in the article that I was reading. So anybody who has played Luigi's Mansion 3, have you played Luigi's Mansion 3?
No.
Man, you don't.
No, I don't have any console.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll give you that much. So I've actually been playing Luigi's Mansion 3 because we recently got Sorg got a Switch for Christmas, and that was one of the games that we happened to get for it, and I've been enjoying the heck out of the game. So Gooigi is a character in that game, and essentially it is a gooey form of Luigi that can go through bars, it can go through small spaces, and it's a supplemental character that you kind of need to use to do some of the things in the game. And the character was explained as a scientific accident involving spilled coffee. So you've got this green gooey character made out of this green goo, and it was an accident involving spilled coffee. So some of the people have been talking about how Gooigi might actually taste like coffee under the circumstances.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was kind of
I could see that, yeah, but I mean the green could just be like radioactive goo and not necessarily a flavor to it.
Honestly, that's my take on it. I'm like, it looks like the ooze from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Is it going to give everybody like this super weird, powerful stuff? You know, is it going to be able to turn somebody into something else? But yeah, so that was kind of the interesting thing. So ultimately, it stemmed from a joke when they were doing the production stuff, or something that was They didn't think that it was going to become this much of an issue, but it was an article that was published because it is something that people have kind of asked the question about. So I just I thought that it was kind of interesting, but at the end of the day, I think that it goes to show Nintendo's absurdity and how they do the most random and obscure things that just become kind of a cult classic type of thing that fans thoroughly enjoy. So on Mario Day, taking over for Sorg, that is my awesome thing of the week. So how about you? Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I will say that is something that makes Nintendo different. They don't rely on doing the, pushing the limits with graphics and everything. They give you story. They give you a reason to play the game, not just I want to look at the pretty graphics. And it's this thing that that kind of like builds it up where, and honestly, having characters that have been the same for decades that are probably significantly older than even the adults playing the game right now. Mario and Luigi being around forever and ever. So you get this. It isn't just a character; it's a character you've known all your life.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the thing. And you just kind of made it a point: is everybody knows whether you've played Nintendo or not. You know the characters of Mario and Luigi. You know the characters that when they do like some fun stuff, and there have been different versions of that game that have come out. So we were talking. It was Mario Wonder, I believe, that the game is, and Sorg thoroughly enjoys playing the game, and it's one of those that I enjoy watching him play because it takes kind of some out of the box concepts with it. So yeah, it was just one of those really cool things. So yeah, like I said, that was my awesome thing of the week. Dave,
that's so cool.
Yep. You have an awesome thing of the week, don't you?
I have an awesome thing, but not for an awesome reason. So recently, I noticed I've been very tired during the day. Actually, almost, and sometimes needing to take a nap midday. And just kind of feeling drained all of a sudden. Went to my doctor after 6 months. Should have went sooner, but it happens. And they said, well, it sounds like you may have sleep apnea. And I'm like, okay, well, I knew that was a possibility. And I remember decades ago, Ruth going through a sleep test where you go to the laboratory, they hook you up with all kind of weird stuff on your face. And you try to sleep in this weird, I don't want to say weird, but unusual situation. And you're like, okay, we got you hooked up here. You're in this probably uncomfortable bed, not having your normal pillows, your normal mattress. now go to sleep for 6 hours so we can see how you're doing. And I'm like, well, I understand it needs done sometimes. What my doctor said, they have an at-home test now. So what they do, they mail you the entire test device here. Let me do that. Oh, there we go. There we go. It's the entire test device here. And it is it's a one-time use. So I don't have to return it. I can recycle it, so I can contact them and let them know I'm done. How do I recycle this? And pretty much let me get this up here. It's a watch part where the battery goes in, and they give you a battery, just a AA battery. It's a blood ox sensor that I put on my finger, and a chest sensor. And all I do is, when I'm ready to go, I download the app ahead of time. I put this on my wrist. I make sure this is on my finger. I kind of get this and I put it right here so it can see me move and probably hear me snore if I do. And then I just hit, I'm going to sleep on the app. And then in the morning, when I'm getting up and they say 6 hours minimum, you get up, you hit, I'm awake in the morning. It sends the data to the lab. It already has the code on it, so it knows it's me. And within, they say around a week, week and a half at most, I'll get results from my doctor. This will actually go, because it's UPMC, this goes to, I think, whoever gets it, then it goes to the UPMC group. And since my primary care physician is part of UPMC, they'll all be together. So I should be getting a result pretty soon on whether I have sleep apnea. Then we can start working on, okay, if I have it, do I need a CPAP machine and how quickly can I get one? And it just kind of blows my mind here's from the thing on how to deal with it. And it's amazing how self-contained and everything's kind of built in, including the little sticker part. You can see there that open that turns it on. And the fact that they actually ship the battery separately, so it makes it a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about the battery draining or anything else going on. It's amazing what they can do to make healthcare quicker and easier and significantly cheaper. I saw where, depending on insurance and everything else, this could be in the low hundreds of dollars, which is still not cheap, but compared to you have to go to a lab, stay overnight, pay all that to go on, that's significantly more expensive. So to me, just knowing how quickly things can change and honestly, a lot of this change was probably pushed during COVID, when it was like, yeah, you need a sleep study, but you can't come in, or we don't want you to come in. How else can we get someone a sleep study without having people come in all the time?
Yeah, and that's an interesting thought with it. So, like, when you were describing the sleep study that actually goes on at the medical facility,
Mm-hmm.
I've been through one of those because they thought that I might have sleep apnea at one point, so they wanted to double check everything. And it like you said, it was insane. Now the place where I went actually had, like, it looked like somebody's bedroom set up. So it had a bed, it had a dresser, it had a more homey feel to it than like a hospital room. But in the same breath, I had all of this stuff hooked up to me. And it wasn't my bed. It wasn't my pillows. So
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely not a comfortable situation. And like you said, you have all of these kind of bells and whistles with everything. And it was just so weird. So I'm curious to see, how your experience goes with this. Obviously, you've been using it, and I'm presuming that it's a consistent, like, few different nights of study with it.
Actually, it's nope, one night. I just got this today in the mail, and it's a single-use time, so it's only one night.
Oh, really?
For maximum 6 hours, yeah. That's all they're looking for.
That's pretty cool,
So,
though.
yeah. Now, one thing I'm curious about is when me having something on my wrist or even my finger, not so much, but the wire going up to my chest. I'm curious to see if the cats will leave it alone. Or if they'll see, if I move around, they see wire, they'll start to go a little crazy, if you will. Because, they do wake me up occasionally in the middle of the night when they want food. Not need food, want food. And our little baby kitten's also one too. Hey, barely a year old. So all of a sudden, I'll be half awake, half asleep, and I'll feel the fuzziness on my hand, and he'll just kind of curl around me and just kind of bite my hand. I love Nip. I love him, but it's like, what's oh, don't do, ouch, ouch, ouch. So we'll see how the animals handle it. And they also said if you have to get up in the middle of the night, leave your phone plugged in, do whatever you need to do, and just come back to sleep. It's not going to cause an issue that way.
So that's really cool. And again, it kind of shows how much medicine has changed. And I like the fact that we're able to use devices at home. So it, again, you get a more restful sleep at home, generally speaking. So your test results can be more accurate and everything. So it's kind of interesting to see how technology plays a part with regard to things such as health. Obviously, we've talked about on the show, or you and Sorg and Katie have talked about on the show, how different technological advances have been prevalent with other industries, but specifically with the health industry, I think that's kind of cool. And you also made a valid point that it goes through your Apple device, so I presume that you're going to be more confident with like the medical data that's being transferred under the circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, it is through an app that I download from the company. So yeah, I mean, generally, and since it's through my doctor, it's not like through a third party facility or something else. I did get this directly from my doctor's office where they send it to me. So that makes me feel, really secure in what I got.
Well, that's really cool. So now that we have our awesome things of the week out of the way, which I hope that people out there are going to kind of check out some of that stuff again. Mario Wonder, super fun game. If you have the opportunity to play it, I certainly recommend. And if you're looking for health options, obviously Dave just brought up a fun little thing to check out for sleep apnea. But Dave, do you know what time now it is for what segment we're in for the show? We have a regular recurring, right?
Well, we do, and I'm not sure exactly what you're talking. I mean, I know a lot of times now is when we thank our patrons.
Well, is
that what you're thinking of, or something else?
We're going to thank our patrons here in a little bit, but honestly, if we want to thank our patrons now, we certainly can. So we have how many patrons do we have now?
Honestly, I just listened to Sork's. I want to say 4 or 5.
Well,
I know Brian Crawford.
Yep. So you can support the AwesomeCast on Patreon, get exclusive After Talk content just for you as little as $1 a month, and help us keep the show going. And your support helps us grow the show and pay the bills. We do a lot of stuff here, and it works out pretty well. And it's with the thanks of our Patreon supporters. So at our executive producer level is Brian Crawford. So thank you, Brian, for your support for the show. At our coffee club level is Cynthia Klosky. Thank you, Cynthia. You've been a supporter pretty much shortly after we started. You signed on to support the show. And then our fan of the show level, we've got John Diggy DeGore. And Potter, there's somebody else on that list that's a Patreon supporter at that level. Can you ring a bell as to who that would be?
I believe that is Dave Podner. And if you're interested in running around Pittsburgh, you can go to gcxc.com/eventspa and use code Dave26 for a $5 discount.
And there you have it. So now we're actually going to go ahead and bring in a fun little segment that friend of the show, Chachi, has been doing. So it's time for our Chachi Says Video Game Minute. So we're going to go ahead and cut to that real quick. Thanks again, Chachi, for your Chachi Says Video Game Minute. Always fun to catch up with him and hear what he's doing with his video game stuff. And definitely glad to have him still part of the AwesomeCast under the circumstances. So we're going to get into some of the news stories that we've had for the moment. And Dave, you and I were talking a little bit before the show about how Amazon has launched its healthcare AI assistant on its website and app. And I think that coming off of what you were just talking about with your sleep study stuff, that this might be a good conversation to go ahead and jump into. So I'll let you go ahead and lead us all in on that one.
Well, and I was saying, I'm kind of as of two minds here. AI strength in my mind, for at least for data, is here's a heap of data, try to find patterns, and then use that pattern versus patterns from the general public and try to match them up so you can say, oh, in the general public, this happens and that causes this, and you have a very similar pattern, so we should look into it. That's what AI does great. Instead of a human being who has to kind of go through the pattern, it really good at pattern recognition and combing through data. Now, the only issue is, A, where is they getting this large set of data from? And B, let's say they take your data from whatever test or whatever else you have, or you have to upload that information to Amazon's AI. I know it says in the article it's HIPAA compliant, but I want to have a little more security than just saying, oh, we're HIPAA compliant, trust us, because we know that AI tends to, when people have built and trained AI models, they're not exactly taking the information. It may be legal, but it's not necessarily ethical how they're getting some of this data, with scraping websites and pulling things, and like for drawing pictures or taking pictures from artists without their permission. So there's lots of issues where when you have a black box like this, what comes out of it. Also, I think they may, hopefully it's better than the old time WebMD, where if you remember way back in the day, you went to WebMD, you typed in your symptoms, and it said, well, it could be a couple things. You could have the common cold, or you could be dying of cancer. One of those two, probably. And it would just send everyone into a panic.
Exactly. And that's kind of what you just reminded me of, is when I saw the headline for the story, that's the first thing I thought was Dr. Google. You search Dr. Google and you're dying no matter what. Like, you could have a cut on your finger and you're dead. Like, you just sign your will now, because you're not making anything after, you're not coming back from a paper cut. So it was kind of an interesting thing. Now here's something that I have a valid concern with here. This is Amazon. Amazon is notorious for taking your information and using it in quote unquote the best ways that a business can use your information. So what are your thoughts on that part of things? Because I have some questions.
No, agreed. And I would say it's similar to Google, where Google gets its money is from advertising. Where Amazon gets its money from is trying to get you to buy stuff, and their AWS services that everyone uses. But their main thing, it's like, will there be, it's kind of like in, for newspapers back in the day, there was a solid hard line between this is the classified department and this is our editorial department. They do not talk to each other. Nothing happens between the two. They are completely separate. And then that barrier started to break down. And then you run into, well, you're getting an ad from the local Chevy dealer. Are you going to report anything bad about General Motors? Here, it's like, well, if I give you this information, are you sure you're just not going to start throwing things at me as oh, here's a suggestion for Amazon because you asked about this in your health. Here's some products that can help you out. And I don't like that. I generally don't like healthcare to be profit driven.
Well, and like you said, with it being profit driven and with Amazon selling services, so
Mhm.
I don't think that we're going to have a problem with regard to they obviously can't prescribe medications without a doctor. So that's I think kind of not in the near future, at least. I'll put it that way.
Well, remember something though. Amazon does have its One Medical, so they can say, "Oh, it looks like you may need something. We can connect you up to one of our providers."
And that's where I was just going to go with that.
Yes.
They can provide you with one of their providers. The other part of it is that they can then market. So if I'm advertising on Amazon, for instance, and I want to do something in that regard, what's to stop me from being a supplemental provider, not regulated by the FDA and stuff, but that I provide herbal supplements instead of prescriptions, and I then put ads on those
Mhm.
things. That's the other part that I'm looking at it going, that can be detrimental, because if I know a few people who don't like to they don't like to go to the doctor, they don't like to get that sort of information, and if I'm
Mhm.
putting in medical information and it's kicking me back that this might be the problem, and I see an ad on the sidebar that says, "Oh, this supplement can help you do this,"
Mhm.
because how many times have you seen an ad that says, "Hey, you're a guy over this age, you're probably suffering from ED. There are ED supplements that you can do because they've mined that data, and they know
Mhm.
that you're a male over this age
Mhm.
that is potentially prone to ED." Hair loss supplements is another thing that a lot of people at a certain age are starting to get.
Mhm.
Is so if Amazon is already targeting those sort of ads with regard to those sort of products, what's to stop people from doing the same thing if it's the cure for cancer? Not necessarily, but that's kind of the far stretch for it. But that's kind of what I'm looking at,
Okay.
is what's to stop somebody from saying this will cure your cancer if you use this substance and it's in a little block on the side of
Mhm.
it, versus what a medical doctor and a medical professional would actually say.
Right. And the one thing to remember is if if something says it cures a particular disease, that's covered by the FDA. But it can say it will improve your sleep quality. It will give you more energy. It will improve your immune system. Those are very vague claims. In fact, sometimes you don't want to have that much better of an immune system, because that's how you get autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, where your immune system's too strong and it starts attacking your joints. But if you just make these vague claims, like you said, for supplements, there's no regulation. There's absolutely none regulation when it comes to supplements. And nothing happens until people start dying or getting sick off of them.
Exactly.
And yeah.
And that's the sort of trend that we're seeing with this, that
Yeah.
like we've seen it in the past. So, I'm seeing all sorts of ads for, different diseases and stuff, or different class action lawsuits. Talcum powder was one that was, a few years ago that
Yeah.
wasn't too far off. And, when I was growing up, talcum powder, my grandmother used talcum powder for so much stuff. My
Mhm.
mom used talcum powder for so much stuff. And now they're saying that it can cause like major health complications.
Mhm.
Nobody would have thought that 20 years ago. And similar thing, like there's no regulation on it because it's talcum powder. I mean, you can buy it over the counter. It's not a big deal. So I'd like to see where this is going to go moving forward. The other potential thing that I have with it is healthcare information stored online digitally. How many times have we seen AWS go down because of nefarious
Thunderstorms.
actions?
Or
Well,
even thunderstorms.
Exactly.
Forget about nefarious, and then half the internet doesn't work.
Yeah, and exactly. So, you have this big company that's doing this stuff, and sure, they're good at sending you shoes or, whatever you get, dog food or basic staples or whatever, that's great. But do you really want them dealing with your health information and having that information available digitally on the internet that anybody could potentially hack into and threaten, or losing access to that based on a power outage, or we've seen major climate issues like massive hurricanes take out towns. What's to say it's not going to wipe out some sort of data center, and then there goes all of your medical history that you've done through them anyway. So I think that it's kind of an interesting thing that I'd like to see where this is going to go. I am curious about it, and I do think that in general, if I can go through an online service, I'm not talking anything like major life threatening. I'm talking about preventative care mostly, or something minimal or minor, that if it can save me from having to physically go to a doctor, I'm probably more apt to check this out, to be honest. But again, I understand that there are some prices that you pay for convenience, and I'm curious what those prices are going to be.
And my other concern is AI hallucinations, because I know things are getting better. They're working on things where you're not going to have some kind of weird out of left field answer. But if you have millions of questions, tens of millions of questions going in, and you have, let's say, a 99% rate and only 1% of weird answers, that could be a lot of weird answers going to people. And then people, because we've all seen where you ask ChatGPT a question and you even say, give me the sources. And they say, oh, here's my source. You click on the link and it doesn't exist. You're like, I asked for a source. I clicked on the link. It wasn't there. You're like, oh, I'm sorry. I made that up. Here's a real source. You shouldn't do that. And I don't know if they have, it's probably going to be a separate AI, not just their general AI. But it's still, I want to have it tested a lot before it's rolled out.
No, I entirely agree with you on that one. I like I said, I think that it needs to be tested thoroughly. It needs to be vetted, like properly vetted by healthcare professionals who would be able to see and train it, to be honest, with regard to that. Medical professionals, to begin with, get years and years of medical training. They go through medical school. Then they have to, once they graduate medical school, they're in a, pretty much an internship program for the most part, where they're working at a facility, learning more of the ropes on a day-to-day basis within that sort of parameter. So I think that it is important that is part of the process with regard to this AI interaction. AI has come a long way. Don't get me wrong, because when ChatGPT first came out, for instance, I would ChatGPT something and it would give me stuff that I knew was wrong. And if I would check the internet, I would confirm that you might want to check your sources over here, just to make sure. So it has gotten better. And again, AI trends toward the individual that's using it. So my ChatGPT, for instance, acts differently for different things than what Sorg's ChatGPT works for. Dave, I'm sure that you get different ChatGPT things than what either of the two of us would. Yeah. And you've trained your ChatGPT or your other AI services to fit within the parameters that you're looking for. So the question becomes, what happens if a hypochondriac is using these services? I don't really have these issues, but I say that I have these issues, and the AI doesn't know necessarily that I don't. How does that level of interaction come into it is another question that I have with it. And again, not to say that it's not a good thing. I just want to make sure that it's thoroughly vetted and thoroughly available to be able to do the stuff that we would eventually need it to do if that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and the other thing would be an outside independent agency. And this is not just these guys, but all the health AI things that are going. You would have a agency that would be an oversight. It would be a government agency that would be able to say, okay, we're going to review and we're going to certify you every year, every 2 years to make sure what you have is correct. Similar how, the FDA certifies medical equipment and make sure, oh, this equipment here, we have tested, it works, it's within parameters, it's not going to cause any issues, it's going to work correct. We're going to give it the thumbs up. I would love to see an outside, and if it's not government, a third party independent, not, oh, we're Amazon, we hired a bunch of doctors who are independent, just like Facebook's independent panel to make sure we're not doing anything wrong, but a truly independent organization that could, like, for electrical items, you have Underwriters Lab that goes and actually tests and make sure, yeah, this plug or this cord is not going to catch on fire when you plug it in. Something like that.
So that's what the UL is when I see the UL stamp on those things.
Yeah.
Which is good to know because I just learned something new, guys. Again, it's not my field of expertise, but it's really, right. I agree with you. I think that there does need to be some sort of, not related to Amazon, not related to the medical providers that they're working with, but a completely third party, unbiased source to kind of oversee that, because that's how things go bad. That's how problems arise, is when you get that brother thing going and nobody's going to call you out on it. So I think that's kind of interesting. Since we're talking AI, since we're talking ChatGPT a little bit, ChatGPT can now create interactive visuals to help you understand math and science concepts,
which I love, because having something where you can get hands-on, change parameters, and see how things change is a great way to learn. Versus, here is a thing in a book. Read the book. You can see the image on the book. You can read the text, but you actually don't see what happens. Now, some people are really good with visualization. They can visualize it, but most people aren't that good.
I entirely agree with you this. And this actually made my day. I'm pretty good at math. But I'm not really good at math. I fought with algebra when I was learning algebra. And I wound up going into, I had a study hall when I was in high school, ages and decades and years ago at this point. But when I was learning algebra, the way that my math teacher taught algebra, I didn't get it. I couldn't comprehend it. But I had a study hall with another math teacher. And since I knew that she was a math teacher, I asked her, I said, I'm having problems understanding this the way that this teacher is explaining it. I know you're a math teacher. You obviously work with algebra. Is there a different way that I can look at this? Is there a different way that I can do this? And she showed me a more visual way to do it. So when I'm trying to find, the diameter of a circle based off of whatever information that I have, she put it visually for me and it made a lot more sense. So I think that this is a really good idea for visual learners, especially people who are like me that may not look at math and science the same way that a more analytical brain does. Sorg is really good at math, for instance. Like I can give him math stuff and he can figure it out real quick. There's a lot of stuff that I still need to use. Like I need to sit down with a piece of paper and kind of like scratch it out and figure out, okay, yeah, that is the answer. That makes sense. Okay. So I'm curious to see how this works, and especially with like our education system now, we have a lot of students passing through high school with below average reading and math comprehension skills. And I think that if ChatGPT and other AI services can kind of help to make that a little bit easier for people to learn, I'm curious to see how that's gonna move forward with it. So, I think that it's kind of an interesting aspect with it.
Yeah, and actually, I just tested it, and it's actually doing one for potential energy versus kinetic, which is basically a fancy way of saying you lift something up high, and you drop it, it moves fast. And the higher it is, the faster you go.
Thank you for explaining that, because physics was something that I really didn't get into in school either, because it wasn't my forte. I'm an English literature major for anybody who's curious. Sorg has taught me how to run the studio, and you can ask him how well that went because I was on the phone with him for like an hour before the show, making sure that things here were gonna go smoothly. But I think that things are working out pretty well. But with that said, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, and I'll let you continue your thought now that I interrupted with this fun little quip.
Oh no, because a lot of times with physics, you need to get hands-on with it, and that's the easiest way to see what happens. One thing I'm reminded of, if you're somewhat familiar with the egg drop contest that some schools have. You have a raw egg, you try to protect it in whatever way possible. You go to the roof or a higher place, you drop the egg, it has to hit the target. And basically the whole idea is you're putting potential energy by adding elevation, you're dropping it, converting that potential to kinetic or movement energy until you hit the ground, and all that kinetic energy goes into the deformation of whatever you have your egg in, or the egg if you don't protect it well enough. When I was at WVU, and I think they still do it, they do a larger version called a pumpkin drop, where you get a pumpkin, I think it has to be at least 8 inches in diameter, and you drop it inside of a contraption from the top of the engineering building, which is 120 feet tall. So using potential and kinetic energy, you can actually calculate, if you're just dropping a straight pumpkin with ignoring air resistance, if it's like a round ball, it's going a good 50 to 60 miles an hour when it's hitting the ground. So you have to figure out, what kind of padding do I need? What kind of aerodynamics? You don't want to have too much because it'll start floating over people, which I've seen a couple times. So you get a big enough parachute, it just kind of starts floating off target and then over the crowd. So having that way you can actually see it work is a great way to learn. And also a way to get kids and younger people interested, because they can then say, well, these are just equations. What's the big deal? You can say, well, here's the outcome.
I think that's a really good summarization of it. And so me being devil's advocate, which I ask Sorg, I do this often, is I'll pose an alternative question. So we have had, in the last few years, an uptick of students using AI to write papers and do their homework and different things like that. So how do you think that this may impact whether people are actually doing the work themselves, or if they're just feeding it into ChatGPT and then turning that in as their own product?
I don't think it'll make a difference, because people are going to use shortcut methods. We'll always use shortcut methods. Before ChatGPT, there were Cliff Notes. And for those who are young, Cliff Notes were little booklets that you could buy that would summarize long books, and it would give you the characters, the big themes of the book, and enough that you could pass reasonably well any exam they would give you. So instead of reading Moby Dick, you read a 30-page pamphlet. And kids who were going to say, you know what, I'm not going to put in the effort, I'm just going to read a little pamphlet. Same type of, students who would say, I'll throw this into ChatGPT and get an answer.
Okay, I appreciate that response, because that's kind of where I was at with it too. But
now I'll say this: what makes it harder on teachers, because I was on that end, if you want to have exams that actually see, does this student really understand what I'm asking, has gotten significantly harder. Because at one time you could say, okay, they may be able to go to, writemyessay.com and have someone write an essay for them. Well, that costs money. You could kind of tell it wasn't the student if they did stuff during the year and then all of a sudden they had a complete change of tone in their writing or in their answers all of a sudden. It made it really suspicious. Versus now, ChatGPT, They could say, here's my essays that I've already written. Write an essay based on the style of my essays I've already written on this particular topic. So that makes it much harder to deal with.
I agree, because I actually use ChatGPT for that purpose. Is I will say, I have a letter that I need to write. This is an example of a previous letter that I've written with a similar context, but I need to change it out to this particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the context. Now, I'll tell you the same thing that I tell clients, and I tell anybody that I'm doing this work with. I never fully trust. It's not trust, but I don't fully use the information that my AI gives me.
Mm-hmm.
I always use that as a framework, and I always change it and make it my own afterwards anyway. So sometimes it'll use words that I might not necessarily use, or it'll address something that I didn't like. I don't like how this is written. I would prefer to have it written like this. So I never, well, not never, but I rarely ever use whatever ChatGPT spits out to me.
Right.
I always give it my own little finesse and tweak before it goes out in final form. Which I think, getting back to kind of one of the things that you mentioned earlier, is I think that this is still going to be an opportunity for students with learning disabilities, perhaps. Students with problems like I had with algebra, being able to understand the concepts a little bit better in order to be able to function and learn it in their own way, in their own manner. Because similar to what we were talking about before with the AI, my ChatGPT knows what, if I ask it for something, it kind of knows what I'm looking for, and it'll give me something in the format or in the style that I generally use from it, because I've taught it to do that. So if I have a learning disability, for instance, maybe dyslexia, okay, and I don't have a full comprehension because of that, maybe my ChatGPT would take that into consideration, that, hey, I know that you have dyslexia. I know that you have a hard time with this. I'm going to break this concept down in a different way, hopefully that you would understand it. Or I'm going to show you a different way to look at it. Like you said, it puts it visually in some regards. That visual aspect of it makes a huge difference. I know if I'm learning something, that if I can see how it's done, I process it better. People laugh all the time because I will take handwritten notes instead of like sitting down an audio recorder or something whenever I'm at a seminar. Because for me, tangibly writing out those notes by hand, it signals something within my brain that I'm more likely to retain that information.
Most definitely.
So yeah, it's something that, like, under those circumstances, I think that the AI is going to be a good tool, that if it learns what the person needs and how they learn, that I think that it's going to be beneficial to teachers and students, because a teacher trying to teach a student without having a concept of, okay, they have a slightly different way of learning this. I don't know how to teach it that way, but I can work with them with their AI to try to work this out.
The only thing, I shouldn't say the only thing, one thing that concerns me are the people writing the AI right now are engineers, computer engineers. They're not your average end user. They're not educators. They're not teachers. They're not professors. So they see a way they can use their program, and then they'll throw it at it. Say, oh, look what we made. You can use this to teach. All while during the whole development, you'd need to have from the ground up various teachers from various places, giving input on how things work and how it should work and how the classroom works and how different classrooms work. Because if you don't have the end user in mind and you only have a bunch of developers, the product will not be good and it will not be used. Or it may be used because the administrator said, we bought this great program. Use the program.
There are so many programs that I don't use the way that they're supposed to be used because, just like you said, the people that put them together are straight thinkers they're not out of the box thinkers necessarily. Like they are writing code, they are writing, they're putting together scientific explanations, or they're using science based stuff in order to do this. And how many scientists do you know that are brilliant artists?
I would have to say, I know a few who are great engineering scientific minds and also play the instruments very well. The best tend to have, the ability to do both. I can't play because I don't have rhythm. I can't sing. I am tone deaf. Ask Ruth. As I sing something to her, she said, I have no idea what you're singing. You can't carry a tune. But I would say it's even more than that. It's a disconnect between people who can code and get what they can do with the software and those who actually have to use it in real life circumstances. And it's literally kind of like the difference between CEO level and worker level. The worker levels are in the hands in, okay, we need to do this. We need to be able to do this. This is what we do here. And then it's like, well, we just signed a new program that we're going to use, and it'll make everything so much better. They, of course, CEO would have no idea how data entry is done. But all of a sudden, the data entry is completely different. And the person who's doing the data entry, who the company kind of relies on that data going into it, what orders going in, money being processed, things like that. They're having to learn a brand new system, which may not work that well. But the higher ups don't know that because there's a disconnect between, like the software program and the salespeople and, the people who deal with it, and then the people actually have to work with it day to day.
You took it a completely different way than what I was thinking with it, which this is why I love conversation, because I was thinking more left-brained versus right-brained people. And that's where I was going with this, with the scientific analytic versus the creative. But you actually just put it in a better perspective, I think, because there are people that think they know how it works, the management people, and then there are the people that actually do the work. And it's the people that actually do the work that are going to be using these tools and resources, not the people overseeing them. That I think is, you brought a very, 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 very valid point to that. So thank you for that. Actually, I appreciate it.
18 years of being in the call center, it does that.
No, and that makes sense. Versus like me, I worked as a paralegal, and then now I'm doing, I don't even know what it is I do anymore. Like I'm sitting here, I'm running a podcast tonight. If you would have asked me 20 years, not even 20 years, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, would you be running a podcast? I'd be like, no. Like, are you crazy? But here
and the only reason also with the left brain, right brain, I knew so many people who were in engineering down WVU, and good at doing the engineering, who were also in the marching band. And the WVU marching band is a very high-end marching band. And just knowing, the hours and hours of practice they have to go through and working around their schedule and the travel they do. And, and then fitting in the rest of college life. And knowing you have someone who's, let's say, a civil engineer, and he was going on full scholarship. He knew that much. He also played clarinet in the band.
And there's something interesting that you've been bringing up is music. And I think music is actually more scientific than it is artistic in some regards. Like you're talking about instruments. Instruments have not a limit on them, but you have a set number of notes, you have a set number of criteria that you can do within that. So I think that it's a little bit more structured than like painting, for instance. You look at a Pollock painting and it's, one thing versus like a Da Vinci painting. Under the circumstances, I could do neither. So like, I'm not saying that I would be picking up a paintbrush and doing that sort of stuff either. But I think it's interesting that you're bringing up about that, because it's, again, something something that I'd love to see more of a comparison and study on, to be honest. I'd like to see more
Mhm.
information on this now that we're having the conversation with it.
Yeah, and honestly, there might be, because there are so many studies on how people learn and how things work out. But the part of the problem is you can't easily make money off of it. So then you have to find funding. And that's very hard. Even in the best of circumstances, that's hard. But I can tell you from my main job, where we deal with a lot of universities, and university funding has been cut significantly recently, where they were, even the hard sciences, something where there could be a tangible outcome, not necessarily something where you're studying something and that will lay a groundwork that 20 years later you see an outcome. And it's like, well, we had funding, we lost funding, so we can't buy your product anymore.
And that's
So
an unfortunate
that
part of
is an
things.
issue.
Yeah, I do agree in that regard. And
Fundamental research is really hard to get started and funded, because there's no, we need to have results by the next quarter. Well, no, you may have results in 10 to 15 years.
accurate. And all of this talk about science and geometry and trigonometry and stuff like that, it makes me kind of hungry. And I'm really glad that the show is sponsored by Slice on Broadway Pizza. And Slice on Broadway has been supporting Pittsburgh podcasting with the perfect pepperoni pizza for over a decade now. So shout out to Slice on Broadway. If you're in the Beachview area or the Carnegie area or any of the other areas, that they've expanded a lot in the recent years. Mm-hmm. We like to think it's because of the podcasts, to be honest, because we talk about them each week. But they pitch in a pepperoni pizza for us as part of the sponsorship, and it is some of the best pizza in the city, especially if you like a New York style pizza. It is a great New York style pizza here in the Burgh.
And so friendly with the staff when you go in. You don't feel, even when you go in and you don't kick down the door, let's say, it just feels so friendly when you get in there. And award-winning cheese pizza.
Absolutely. So, Dave, we're wrapping out the end of the show here.
Okay.
We're just about to 8 p.m. And do you have an awesome tip of the week?
I don't, but there is something I wanted to bring up that I saw that was put out on the newsletter put out by my company. It's actually the top link I have in the stories. And it's a little bit more lighthearted than what we've been talking about. So we have a little bit of a palate cleanser. So we have, if you will, the car for the Pope. So there is the Popemobile, of course, and various Popemobiles that the Pope uses. Well, the Pope is from Chicago. The Ford Explorer is also made in Chicago, in the Chicago plant by Ford. So they made a special version of an Explorer. It's actually a hybrid Explorer, which is nice. And if you scroll down the page a little bit, you can see they've added little details. So they have little tags on the seats, which are the flags of the city of Chicago. In the back of the seats, they have the skyline stitched in. In the seal boards down below, you can see you have Chicago and the Vatican. You have right there, kind of etched in there for the Pope. So it's just a neat little thing that's like, and they said normally if someone, does something like this, they really publicize it. Ford didn't. It was actually the Catholic Diocese of Chicago that really publicized it. So that's also kind of nice, where a company isn't trying to make money off of something like this. This just feels more a publicity stunt. So, and again, we've heard the jokes since the Pope was added in, Pope Bob from Chicago, like in the deep dish and the Bears. So, it's just I think it's just a nice, happy story that's a little different.
You know what? I will take that. As far as my awesome tip of the week, sit down and become friends with your AI. Because if you use your AI and not for nefarious reasons, not to try to take over the world, but if you use your AI in a very nice, nurturing way, when the AI does rise against us, maybe they'll think of you. No, I'm completely kidding on that one. But I do have to say, seriously, AI is the future, whether we want to admit it or not. And I think that having a good understanding of it and how it can make your life easier in so many different ways, I think is a good tip of the week. So on that, you have been our awesome audience. Have an awesome week.
This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.
I'm Eamon.
I'm Merlin.
And we're a gay.
And his NB.
Are you a reality television connoisseur?
Do you like it discussed from an LGBTQ lens?
If so, A Gay and His NB is the podcast for you.
Hear us break down all your favorite guilty pleasure reality shows from Bravo, Drag Race, and just about everything in between.
Listen to A Gay and His NB on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.